Haidong! In this video, we're going to talk about folding your uniform. I imagine not much of an introduction is really needed for this. This is going to be how I prefer to fold my uniform. This is how I would recommend you do it as well, just because it's going to maintain the general lines of your uniform. It's going to maintain your pleats if you have them on your pagi, and it's also going to keep your belt looking pretty good. With not that much more introduction, let's take a look at how I would recommend that you do this. Cards on the table, right? Because again, I like my transparency. This is going to be something that I've taken from a few different sources. So yes, I did learn this from one of my Gumdo instructors, but primarily, especially with the pleating with the pagi, it is going to be from my kendo background. So again, once again, full disclosure, because that's how I like my information. But this is still going to be very useful to you. We're going to have some modification just because we don't have actual hakama with like the strings and all that fun stuff. But this is going to be still super fun. Oh, new ankle. So what you can imagine, right? So let's just pretend we're taking off our uniform. So I already switched, right? So I'm in my streets. So we can probably imagine, so I talked about how to potentially, remove your belt without having it drag on the floor in my etiquette video. But imagine we just did that, right? So for now, let me just pretend I wasn't very careful. I kind of like bundled up my belt because I'm not really very thoughtful. So let's imagine we just have our belt as such, right? So I'd recommend, so if it's as, tumbled as it is, I would recommend, so get the two edges lined up. So I like to have the gold always on the outside, so the actual embroidery on the outside. So what I'm going to do is very gently, right, so I don't want anything dragging, so always have the lag, whatever this is, the extra in your other hand. All I'm going to do is line those two edges up, right? Make sure they're nice and secure. At that point, I'm going to start releasing and following all the way down. Now, if you want to, and this is kind of like your first time in a while that you're doing this, take this. I'm going to take my the World Haidong Gumdo portion, and I'm going to smack it onto my edge that way, straighten, and at that point, fold it in half once more. In general, you want your name on the outside, right? Because if everyone did it such that the World Haidong Gumdo is on the outside, and you just pick up a random belt, you're not going to know it's yours. So it's a little bit more just straightforward reasoning, right? So you know this is your belt. Another reason why I like this particular way of folding it is it kind of like undoes some of the folding that happens on the belt when you tie it. So when you tie it, you're going to crumple it in a little bit. Versus if you straighten it after every session, it is going to maintain its shape a little bit more. Now it will eventually crumple, especially if it is a cotton belt, just because they tend to do what they do, right? But this is a nice way to make sure you have a little bit more longevity in your belt. Also, you're showing respect to your belt because your belt is also a representation of you and all the hard work that you put into it. So make sure you show your belt proper respect. With that, let's go to our top. This is going to be a lot more straightforward, so I know you're just seeing my feet at the moment. But all you're going to do, again, this seems pretty straightforward. We're going to grab the top of your uniform. All you're going to do is put it on the floor as such. Now obviously, if you are doing this at the end of your session, after you fold your uniform, make sure you clean your floor just because you don't want your sweat and grime on the floor, especially during our pandemic years. So make sure you clean the floor after you're done. But yeah, so we have our uniform as such, so that's not anything particularly fancy or anything like that. Let's take a look. So the first thing you're going to do is kneel next to it because, so first of all, kneeling next to your uniform is going to show a lot more respect to it. So all we're going to do is just straighten it out a little bit, right? So we want to make sure your collar is actually going to have that nice V at the end. But from here, I usually actually start over there, so I don't know why I'm over here. But we just want our sleeves to be nice and straight. As we come over yonder, we're going to line up the edge of this top to the bottom of our V here. So with that V, all we're going to do is straighten it out this way, straighten it out that way, and so we have that nice crease that way. What we're going to do eventually is also make sure this is nice and straight because again that's going to crumple kind of the same way the belt does, and we're also going to make sure this is also going to be straight as we go through. I'm actually going to tuck that in, right? We're also going to find our other one, tuck that in as well, so hopefully that's all coming out. We're going to add this corner to that corner. we're going to straighten everything out. And we're going to also, once again, straighten the strings. So everything should be pretty flat, right? So this is not like dress clothes, right? Where you have to like deal with like all the random pleats. This is all pretty straightforward. The next part's going to depend on how big your uniform is relative to others, and you'll see what I mean. So what you could do, so if your sleeves are short enough relative to the girth, all you can do is actually going to take, again, this corner, put it that corner, and you're going to bring it in parallel. Now, if your sleeves are short enough, you can actually just lie them down, right? So now if your sleeves are longer, I would recommend you fold it in a little bit. That's how I usually do it. But because this uniform's a little bit on the shorter side compared to its height, I'm going to actually keep it as such. And I'm going to take this corner, bring it that corner, I'm going to bring that in, right? So always check, right? So if you notice there's a little bit of a bulge here, you want to probably undo it, right? Fold it in, right? Make sure all the other lines are in, fold it in. And if you do something to one side, you want to do the other. In this case, you may not need to, right? Because everything is kind of lined up. I like to fold them in regardless, right? So now you have something more presentable, right? I'm going to fold it right below the crease, right? I'm going to be here. Just going to fold it in thirds, make sure these are nice and smooth. Fold it in here, right? And I like to have the insignia on top, and that's how you fold the top of your uniform. So the bottom is going to be ever more fun. So let's take a look at that. So with your podgy, right? So with your pants, you're actually going to take your folded front, and you're actually going to put that on its front, like so. Put belly down, right? So what we're going to do. So what I'm actually going to do, I tend to tug this so it's a little more straight, right? We're going to fold you down like so. What we're going to do next is we're going to make sure we have, so you're going to notice again there's a back flap this way, and you can tell because there's going to be a topper, a more prominent fold on the top, and you want that to be eventually on the top, but you do want a little bit of a folding action here, right? So if that is the back of the right pant, you're going to fold in your left, and you're going to put the right on top of that. So if I kind of bring this in, right, so you can kind of notice there's a bunch of loops going in, right? So I want to pinch that. I want to make sure that's nice and straight. So although it's really hard to see, you can probably notice that there is in fact a back flap that way. So what I'm going to do is take this pinching, and I'm going to flip it onto its front. It's going to take it, I'm going to flip it, and we're going to be probably too close to the camera. I'm going to take it, I'm going to flip it like so. So notice that this is pretty flared out, right? But all we're going to do is smooth it out, right? So we're here, again, maintaining that pleat. All we're going to do is feel your innermost pleat, and we're going to bring that in, right? And feel the next innermost, and eventually we're going to straighten everything out, right? Same thing with the one closer to you, right? So there's going to be, again, this pleat with this edge. If you don't have it ironed out, you can just feel it along and kind of just feel where it might go. Pull it in, making sure everything is nice and straight, right? So again, notice we have nice, clean lines, right? And again, if you haven't ironed your podgy, that's also fine, right? So long as it's nice and straight, you can kind of introduce your own folds as you go. But from here, right, so again, we still have all this folded. We're going to fold in the corner, so almost like the wing of it, right? And fold in the wing so that this is all a straight line. We can fold in this wing, so we also have more or less a straight line. All right, I'm going to try that again. A little bit more of a straight line like so. Now if you want to, you can even bring it in even more, right? So you can even bring it in all the way up here if you want a more narrow looking folded pant, right? So from here, I usually do this in thirds or quarters, right? So here, that's about the size I want, right? So I'm going to break it, fold it in, make sure everything is good, especially on the sides here. So notice this is all one flat piece of fabric. fold it, roll it in. Again, you can check as you go, but eventually you're going to have something that's going to be a little bit more like such, right? So this is going to maintain the pleats in your uniform, right? And we can just keep everything together as we carry it. With that, that is another aspect of etiquette that I would like you to think about. Again, this is not necessarily something about ego or anything like that. This is showing respect to your equipment, also respect to, again, your martial art, your dojang, and all of that stuff, right? If Master Kim can always look his best, all of his students can also. But with that, so give this a go, right? So there's going to be other ways you can do it. The main idea is to make sure you don't just crumple everything together, because that would be bad, right? Again, it's not showing respect, and also it's going to make you look kind of sloppy. But with that, make sure you stay humble, right? So make sure you don't do that, you don't do this for your own ego or anything like that. Again, this is humility, right? So you're taking your time, to lay down low, go to the floor, make sure everything is clean, make sure you clean your floor after you're done, because it is the dojang, and you want to make sure it's nice and crisp as you leave. So make sure you stay humble, stay safe, pandemic, and keep training. Haidong. And look good, right?